Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. The Zillow housing market crash has begun once again as we finally have over half of the top U.S. metro areas facing year-over-year price decline at the same time where we have record-breaking price cuts. That's right, you guys. Sellers are absolutely slashing the prices of their houses because they are desperate to sell, as inventory is also above where we were at pre-pandemic. So I'm going to go over.
Okay, I saw this pop in my timeline. I'm not very familiar with what is it, real estate mindset, but it seemed interesting to me, and I was like, okay, you got me. I'll give it a crack. So I figured we'll just review it together and dissect it a little bit and see what the information is. And I don't know, let's just see what his what he's got going here. All right, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button.
Over all of the most recent details from Zillow. And then I'm also going to show you guys how to find out if you're getting a good deal in your own housing market by pulling up my MLS and showing you guys how to use the math to find the deal. Let's start by going over June's housing market report from Zillow, and this just came out today, you guys, August 18th of 2025. A few key takeaways. Buyers continue to gain leverage as affordability challenges keep competition low. Now, 27 major metros are in buyers' favor or neutral, and that is up from 24 last month. And this is absolutely great news because traditionally, around this time of year, house prices are still going up. Bullet point number 2, listings are lingering. The median for sale home has been listed for 60 days, 2 months. That's crazy. The longest of any July in Zillow data. So we have a record-breaking homes also sitting on the market. Very important piece of data to pay attention to. Bullet point number 3, sellers cut prices on 27.4% of listings, a record high in Zillow data that stretches all the way back to 2018. So we have several records this month that are all complementing buyers. But remember, you guys, hang on for the math part of this, because even with this being said, some states are going to take longer than other states, and some markets are going to take longer than other markets to crash and correct. But understand, no matter the area that you're interested in purchasing, the math is always the same.
Okay, couple things here. I agree with the statement that you have to understand your market. That's something that I've talked about on here quite a bit. I will say Zillow sometimes gets a little bit tricky in the reporting. Most of these platforms, Zillow, your Redsins and all Redfins, sometimes you really gotta understand what you're reading. I don't know how else to explain this, so if you're not a religious person, I understand that completely, but um it's almost like reading the Bible, right? I was told when I took like some, I wouldn't call it Bible college, but maybe some, you know, classes. And they always said if you're reading the Bible, you can get very confused. Just just if you're, just reading it for, especially like the King James version, which is probably not the most literal translation, but just work with me here. Let me cook. If you're reading it just for what it is, you're probably going to get confused. That's why they always say, like, well, in the class that I took, they said you never want to read the Bible just to be reading the Bible because you can get confused. You want to read the Bible with some type of concordance that kind of gives you a little bit more nuance and breakdown of what they were saying for that specific time period, to those specific people, to that specific culture, and that specific region. Because a scripture without context is just or a text without context is just a text. I'll say that again. A text without context is just a text. So just take it for what it is. Um, and again, this is not like a religious thing or not. I'm just trying to break it down in a way that you can hopefully digest it. Uh, then the other thing too was, I'm trying to remember the other um, saying that was there. You can also like there were things that were in the world at the time that were not mentioned in the Bible. And then this is not a Bible study class. Just bear with me here. Like chocolate was not mentioned in the Bible, but we know chocolate exists. So when you think about it like that, anytime you're reading these articles and these headlines that have these flashy, catchy titles, a lot of people use the thumbnails, which I'm guilty of that too. We all are hustling on the YouTube streets. Um, some of us like to draw you in because that's unfortunately all the data points. The only way you'll click on a video is if it's doom and gloom and crash and burn, and that's the only you get more responses when you lead with that. I hate it. If I'm being completely honest, I absolutely hate it. But if I don't, you don't get views. So it's a little clickbaity. But my goal has always been to, once I get you in the fold, I want to then educate you to the best of my understanding, not saying I'm 100% correct or my way is the only way, but maybe give you a different perspective from someone who actually has managed real estate over the years and all different forms of real estate, whether it be multifamily, commercial, duplex. I actually own a duplex in a major city. And so I try to educate you from my standpoint of challenges, issues that I faced, and oh, don't do this, don't do that type of situation. So I say all that to say context matters. So when you see this, you can kind of use some critical thinking to kind of work your way through it, and instead of taking it as gospel. Um, so when they're talking about 2018, this is the most, well, yes, that's probably the obvious thing. Like 2019, anything before 2020, it's just very different world, different circumstances. Even after 2020, different circumstances, different world. So you can't compare the two. I mean, you can, but I don't know if it's fair. Does that make sense? We're in a new world now. Even writing some of these budgets that we write for properties and buildings. Sorry guys, my camera's doing its thing again. Um, Here, just give me a second. Let me see if I can get that back. Anyway, I'm just gonna keep talking because I don't want to restart this over. But my point is, anytime someone's saying crash, 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 always my antennas always tend to go up because I know that that's not always the case. There's a lot more to the story that's probably not being said or not being reported on. I'm not trying to bash this guy because I don't know his content very well in full transparency, but just those are my initial thoughts when I hear that type of talk. So let's let them unpack a little bit more.
When we dig into the details, this is what Zillow is saying. Price cuts reach record highs. Sellers cut prices again on 27.4% of listings in July. That's the highest share since Zillow began tracking this metric in 2018. Cuts are more common in the South and the mountain regions and are less widespread in markets more favorable to sellers in the Northeast and on the West Coast. Zillow's market heat index shows competition among buyers continues to decline nationwide, not just in Texas, not just in Florida, but competition is winding down across the nation. Obviously, it took long enough, right, guys? Comment below. Did it take long enough or not? My gosh. And also comment below and let me know, have you maintained your purchasing power and your patience? Let me know below. This is reaching the lowest point, again, for any July going all the way back to 2018. 27 major markets are either balanced or in the buyer's favor, 3 more than last month, and 9 more year over year. The housing market right now on a nationwide average is crashing. The only thing that could temporarily prop it up is more quantitative easing, like what happened in 2023. It was called the Bank Term Funding Program, as well as the reverse repo market that's still in effect.
Okay, so when he says crashing, again, there are a couple of markets that are experiencing some pain for sure. Um, but I think he even clarifies that everything is hyper local in his scenarios and or Zillow scenarios. That being said, we, like I've said before, we have experienced a decade of appreciation condensed down to a few years. That's unhealthy for any market. And so what happened was prices became elevated and are elevated. And so you have elevated prices and you have higher interest rates. And what he's saying is essentially if we lower interest rates, that's going to I guess be favorable to buyers. We'll let him unpack a little bit more and find out exactly what his point is because to me it's still not very clear yet outside of a crash. But I think there was a lot of sellers. There are a lot of sellers who had wish pricing, is what we call it in the business, or wish pricing. Like they want it with everyone thinks their house and their property is worth $1 million. It's just right out of the gate. Everybody, right? Meaning you want the highest you can sell your property for and walk away with like Scrooge McDuck, swimming in gold. Unfortunately, that's just not how real estate works. It's all about the market and the conditions of the market, depending on what it is that you're looking for. So, with that in mind, a lot of sellers listed their property and the property sat because people could not afford to buy a home at the very high interest rates because of people buy on payment, not necessarily on price. We don't really look at price. We should, but we don't. We look at payment. Can I afford the monthly payment? If the monthly payment works for my lifestyle, hey, I can afford the price. I'm not saying do that, but that's generally how I hear people talk about it. A lot of sellers were listing the properties higher and we're not getting that pricing. So what happens? What's a natural thing to do if you can't get $100,000, but you know that okay, I can live. I've lived in the house long enough, and I have plenty of equity. I'm happy if I walk away with $80,000. You lower your price to $80,000. Like that's not rocket science. And there's some people that have lived in their homes for a very long time who are okay with taking, I'm using air quotes and you can't see me because my camera's not working, a hit on that because they've paid down their mortgage and it's all gonna balance out on the purchase side. So again, a text without context is just a text. So there's a lot of nuance here. It's not as black and white, and that's the problem with a lot of Zillow and Redfins. They try to go very black and white. They have a lot of data, a lot of fancy spreadsheets. They're just not actually looking at like real case scenarios and stuff like that and the real life issues. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Let this play for a little bit longer.
But listen to this, guys. Take a look at this. Listings linger unless priced right. Homes are taking longer to sell than in recent summers, and the gap between attractive listings that sell and others that linger is growing. Listings that sold in July did so in 24 days, 6 days slower than last year, but just 1 day longer than the pre-pandemic average for July, so longer than it was pre-pandemic. Think about what this is saying. Why isn't everyone jumping up and down like, yeah, it's finally in the data if we've been patient? Why isn't everyone jumping up and down in excitement? Maybe because they own a house. I don't know. However, the median lifespan of all listings on Zillow is 60 days, 4 more than the pre-pandemic average. It's worse than pre-pandemic now. Finally, the gap between these two figures is the largest for any July in Zillow data, which began again collecting data in 2018, which is not true. They've been collecting data since at least the global financial crisis. This is for sale inventory, and I want you to pay attention to the year of 2020 right here. So right now we have 1.38 million active listings on the market right now. That is a 6-year high, and we have now more inventory. You go back to January of 2020 at 1.28 million. We have more inventory now than we did pre-pandemic. Okay, so price cuts hitting record, homes leaning on the market hitting a record, half of major metros with price decline. Come on, you guys, it's becoming clearer and clearer that the housing market right now is crashing. But again, it depends on your market. Don't forget that. When we go down to home values, this is what this says. The typical US home value is $367,965. The typical monthly mortgage payment, assuming a 20% down payment, is $1,907. Home values climbed month over month in 28 of the 50 largest metros, with the biggest gains in Buffalo at 1.5, and that's month over month, Hartford at 1.2 month over month, Detroit 1.2, Cleveland 1.1, and Pittsburgh 1.1. However, home values fell on a monthly basis in 19 major metro areas. The largest monthly drop was in San Jose, California, down 1.1%. Then San Francisco, California, down 0.7. Then Miami, Florida, down 0.6. Austin, Texas, down 0.6. And Tampa, Florida, also down 0.6. But let's look at the year.
Okay, so with even okay, so those markets I'm very familiar with, especially San Jose and San Francisco. Uh, and obviously everyone Florida's been in the news a lot lately for obvious reasons. They're having a lot of people sell. It's they're getting blasted by hurricanes. They have a tax or not tax, but home insurance issues and so forth. And California's kind of getting like that as well. Certain parts of it anyway. Um, Even with a 1.1% year over year value in San Jose and even a point, what is it, point 0.7 in Miami or no, sorry, San Francisco. If you know anything about those markets are so expensive. I mean, we're talking 1.5, 1.6. They're not for your average kind of like run of the mill house, nothing special. So a 1.1 year over year to me is not like an alarming thing versus if you did that at like somewhere in the Midwest, that might be like, okay, that's a little bit more. They don't have a lot of room they could work with, but like certain markets, they just got more playroom, if you will. Uh, yeah. Right. So I've been reacting to this video for now what 5 minutes into it, 5.5 minutes or so. And I'm not saying it's completely false, but I'm saying like it doesn't give much context, right, as to why. And that's something I always look for when I hear crash, crash, crash. Okay, why? Like when everyone was saying this a few years ago, they're it's crashing, it's crashing. But no, it was not crashing. There was a crash in transactions, right? People were not selling, people were not buying. We had elevated interest rates, right? There's a reason for that. Was it almost 75% of mortgages? I'm somewhere wrong, but I know I'm close. 70% of mortgages have 3%, 4% or lower of an interest rate because they all refinanced when interest rates were very low. And then you have what is it, 45% of mortgages have no, our homes in the US have no mortgage. Again, context. There's a lot of context that's missing out of this data. So when people get on here and just start throwing numbers out, you have to be like, okay, well, why? Why is there a year over? You know what I mean? Hopefully, I'm making sense here, and hopefully, this helped. I'm going to leave the link in the description for you guys to go ahead and leave your thoughts on the comment section, and please subscribe. We'll really appreciate it. Uh, Most of you know, if not already, my goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Would love if you can help me do that and share. And hopefully, this is adding value to you and giving you something to chew on for a while and think about. Um, but yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoy it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment and share. And we'll see you guys in the next one.